Hello, welcome to the channel. Whoa, wow, that's a bit weird. I've got some reverb there. Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Karsh Goblin. This is Goblin Cave TV, and we are going into our TTRPG book club. Just as I get my headphones sorted out, so I don't have reverb going on, because that's something that's been happening right this morning, which has kind of been a weird thing. Been trying to organize some audio stuff, bits and pieces, and I was pretty sure we actually had it sorted, but no, we're bouncing somehow. So welcome in, we are here, we are doing some just chatting about some role-playing stuff. Today our focus is going to be on The Witcher. We're actually going to have The Witcher easy mode. Now just a couple of products that we've got here for The Witcher as well. So this is the full Witcher book. It's based off the Witcher series by by CD Projekt Red. CD Projekt Red owns Untitled Games, which make this book. Same type of situation for, say, how can I put it? So it's the same type of situation for Cyberpunk Red, where Untitled Games makes the role-playing game, and CD Projekt Red owns Untitled Games and also does the computer games. So it's pretty much the same group. There is a novel series which actually begun and started the whole Witcher whole IP, and it's amazing. The writer, personally, I don't know how much respect I have for the writer when he cans over CD Projekt Red, when CD Projekt Red has really expanded that universe and really worked with it, and then he's gone after them, and there's been a whole legal mess. So I'm just not. So here's the full book. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff in here that we're not going to get to because we're only looking at the easy mode, which is the basic quick starter set. So a couple other projects that they've got as well. They've got the Witcher's Journal, which is essentially a mini monsters manual, 36 monsters or 33 monsters. Yeah, 33 monsters, 2 exceptional monsters. So there's not a huge monster universe in this, but the monsters are very unique compared to what you have in your normal fantasy games. Very, very unique setting. So the other product I want to just do a quick note before we get into fully is this. This is the GM screen, but what I wanted to point out is the color coding. So everything is color coded throughout the book and even throughout this, and I think it's a really, really, really cool thing, a really great way of doing things. So before we get into the whole game itself, just quickly, we have Soundscape in the background for our audio. We're using Syrinscape Friendly Tavern, which is, I think, really cool. Soundscape are not a sponsor of the channel. They just make amazing audio, and I like using the audio in the background when I'm studying and when I'm reading up on books. It just gets me in the mood of a role-playing campaign. So today we're looking at Friendly Taverns and Drinking Time, and that's what we've got in the background. So let's get into the book itself. So this is The Witcher Easy Mode. The Witcher is a rules medium. It's a little bit higher rules medium than some of the rules mediums that we look at. And it's from Untitled Games, and you can find their stuff at untiltedgames.com. They've got a lot of stuff. The Witcher is one of their IPs. The other main IP is the Cyberpunk 2020 series or the Cyberpunk Red series. Really, really, really good stuff there. And the Pondsmiths are very heavily involved in all their stuff. I like Mike Pondsmith being the person that created the Cyberpunk Red. Now, the rule system, the basic rules. The basic rules itself, we usually go through this just to touch on. The basic rules is very similar to your generic roll dice plus mods versus DC. In this case, the dice is a D10, not a D20, and the mods are pretty self-explanatory. And the DCs, we'll actually have a look at the DCs. So we'll go to 12 on the thing so I can actually show the DCs here, because I know it's here. So an easy roll here is going to be a 10, an average roll 14, challenging 18, difficult 10, so difficult 20, nearly impossible 30. And how are you going to get a 30 in a roll? Well, one of the things in this game system is exploding dice. We're going to get to it, but it's a whole thing. I actually don't like exploding dice. It's a throwback to some of the early stuff, some of the early ideas of role-playing games. I've never really enjoyed the idea of exploding dice, but we will get to it. And it's a whole thing in itself. So that's the basic system. That is absolute basics. It's just your D10 plus your modifier versus your DCs. Now, one of the things I want to speak about is the rich character creation. This is just a tiny little bit of the character creation. So character creation, the world is dark. If you're not familiar with the books or the series, like TV series or even computer game series, it's a dark world. Everyone is downtrodden. Even the richest of rich are downtrodden as well. It's not a great place, a great setting. Everyone dies of dysentery essentially. I'm kidding. But what I'm trying to mean is like there is this whole like not everyone is like in a happy place, and pretty much most people are not in a happy place. So in the life paths, there's a lot of random rolls which kind of give you some instant background, and this is only a tiny bit of the instant rolls you can get. In the full book, it's far bigger, and it can actually help give you a lot of different ideas for your background. And I think it's actually a really good starter point. I'd rather doing this type of giving you these little just bullet points of information which you can then play off. And they're diverse enough, and there's so many of them that no one is going to be the same as others. Or at least for the most part, most people are going to have bad issues in their life, but they're not going to be exactly the same bad issues in their previous life. So I really like it, and it's a massive rich character creation, which I'm really excited about. Now the other thing is that every class has, we'll go back to one, so you go back to here. So every class has 3 different class they go to. So a fighter might go down a range class, might go down like a mercenary class. They're all very diverse, and you could have 2 fighters in the same, and you would not be the same, because you can choose totally different paths to go through, and even just how you play it, or your background and whatnot, can really change what your character is going to be. So you can even have identical path in the class, and you can still be very diverse because of that character background system. Generally, I'm not a big fan of the, like I should say, I'll qualify that. I used to not be a big fan of the life, the life tree stuff, like that type of random stuff. But I've grown to actually, like, when it's done well, it actually shines. And I believe this is done well in other game systems, mostly through, say, BattleTech and MechWarrior, being the same product. They haven't done it very well, and it doesn't really work for their system very well. It makes it overly complex. In this, it gives you some really good, rich ideas. In the BattleTech, it kind of just doesn't really work at all. So the life selector stuff, not a big fan of generally, but this is a really good version of it. They've also done very good in the Cyberpunk Red version. I'm actually really excited when I look through that one that they've done it very well there too. So we'll go back to the systems. So that's actually the main things I really wanted to focus on. Just to talk about those things. That's the main things out of the way. Done. Fantastic. Done. Like the system. Done. But let's go into a few other things. So as I said, there's the basics. So your D10 plus your modifiers from your character sheet, like pretty much your standard modifiers that you normally get from your skills, etc. Versus difficulty, you can oppose rolls as well. One of the things you need to kind of keep in mind is that meeting doesn't just beat, you actually need to beat. So it's kind of like a lot of common systems these days have, if you meet the roll, if you meet the DC, that's good enough, you win. Well, no, like this system is about succeeding, so you need to actually pass the roll. So if the DC is 15, getting 15 is not good enough, you still fail. And that's an important thing to note. It's an important thing to keep in mind. So generally stuff is done very similar to how you think. with opposed roll, success, failure, etc. Except for the success failure, you need to actually pass the roll instead of just equaling the number. So there's modifiers. Modifiers come in pretty much as you would expect, and there's good examples of what they are and how to apply them and when to apply them as well. So the other thing is here's the exploding dice. So when you roll a 1 or a 10, that explodes. If you roll a 10, you essentially you add 10 to the modifiers and roll again. If you roll 10 again, you add 10 to the modifiers and roll again. And it can keep on going bigger and bigger. That's how you can get to 30 or plus for a roll. I've never been a big fan of them. They are really a throwback to some of the very, very old systems. And of course, being like Syrinscape being one of the original companies that are still under original ownership, I can see where it comes back to one of the original, the really old style stuff, because they are an old school company. I've never never liked it, especially when it's a 1 in 10 for an exploding dice. Actually 2 in 10, because you can explode up and you can explode down. So exploding down happens a little bit differently. So you if you roll a 1, okay, you roll a 1, okay, exploding dice in the other direction. So you get all your checks, and then every time you're rolling again, you're minusing to that. You can't go minus below 1, but if you roll a 10 in your extra rolls, that explodes again, which can keep going downwards and downwards and downwards. Except for it can't go past 1. So it's kind of a weird part, but as I said, I'm not a big fan, especially when it's a 1 in 10 to go up and 1 in 10 to go down. That'll happen quite a bit. Now, the statistics, your base ability stuff for your character, most of it's self-explanatory here. Intelligence, reflex, dexterity, body, speed, empathy, craft, will, luck, vigor, save, etc. So a couple ones you wouldn't really find is craft, for creating things in medicine. Empathy has been seen in other places, is your understanding of other things going around, your social interactions essentially. Body is kind of common. Most people consider it as constitution or con. Body is the same thing. Reflexes like dexterity, etc. Luck is a pool instead of just a statistic. It's a pool which you can spend to get pluses on certain things, like pluses on rolls. But again, it's a pool, so you're spending it. Leap, hit points, stamina, recover. Leap is your movement in combat. So it governs special moves, I should say. And stamina is a whole thing in itself. Stamina is a big thing about this, which is something I want to talk about. So your skills, pretty much generally what you'd expect from a game like this. So in combat, your initiative is D10 plus reflex, done. And it's a cyclic one, so once it's done at the start, you keep on going around. You can delay yourself in combat, so you move your initiative down to another level, and from that point on, that's your level, which you keep going on. It's actually something we're starting to introduce in our channel with general combat, just so we can keep the flow going. So we want to actually be able to, if someone wants to delay, something happened right before them, instead of spending 5 minutes on coming up with an answer for their turn, we're just starting to implement, okay, just delay, move down to whenever something happens, you can act and go, okay, that's where you're going to be, and that's where your initiative then moves to. It's just something we're trying to start on the channel, just to keep things flowing, because we're trying to put on shows. But yeah, it's already in this system. Now, you've got, in your turn, you can do a movement and you can do an action. You can't split your movement. You can do your action first, then your movement. You can do your movement first, then your action, but you can't split your movement. So in D&D 5th edition, yes, you can split movement. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, no, you can't. If you do 10 foot of movement and then do your attack and you want to do another 10 foot of movement, well, that's one action to do 10 foot of movement, and then one action for attack, and then one action for the rest of another movement. So you can't split your movement. So in this, you can't either. you can do special actions, and you can essentially get an extra action by hurting your stamina. By overexerting yourself, you can get an extra action with a -3 penalty, of course. Because of course you're going to get a penalty for doing something like that. So I really like that you can like kind of cheat the system just that little bit, but you're punishing yourself by doing that. Now, another thing in the system is weapon accuracy. Now, I've seen this in only a few systems, and it's a system I really, really like. It's a rule set I really like, and I think it should be in far more systems. So weapon accuracy is essentially some weapons are easier to use than others. Some weapons are very self-explanatory. So they make some weapons easier to use than others, pretty much. Weapons have their own innate accuracy to be used. So a longbow is actually a complex weapon, so it might not have much weapon accuracy. But say an axe, even better, a mace, pretty easy to like think of. Okay, I just hit them. That's it, done. There's no finesse, there's no training, there's no special abilities needed for it. It's an accurate weapon. It's just like, okay, I just hit them with that. And it has that innate ability, which is why spearmen and things like that was usually for peasants, because spears are very simple, easy to use weapons. Swords take training. Especially specialized swords take a lot of training. But anyway, so weapon accuracy is a thing in this, and I like it. So attack actions, you can do a fast attack. This is in melee, of course. You can get 2 attacks with that. You can do a fast range. There's some limitations on that, and what can do fast range in that as well. But they also don't get 2 attacks unless you're throwing things. You can throw 2 things as a fast, or you can do a fast thing. Anyway, you can do a strong attack with a -3 penalty, but you do double damage, and you can do a strong ranged attack as well, for certain ranged weapons again. So every attack formula is essentially D10 plus the skill bonus, like fighting, melee, whatever you're using, plus the weapon accuracy. So the weapon that you're using has its own modifier. And that's pretty much it. Once per round, you have a free, oh my god, I'm defending myself. That can be from, you can choose to block, you can dodge, you can reposition, i.e. you can tumble out of the way, which is common in the computer games, kind of like a dark size tumble to that type of thing. And you can do that again, but it's going to cost you an extra stamina for every time you're attacked. If you don't use those defensive actions, it's really, really easy to hit you. So stamina, as I mentioned, is a thing. It's a really, really important thing when it comes to combat. They have a hit location which is built into the game. Hit locations generally slow down combat and complicate things. In systems like Roll20, they're generally part of the character sheets. So because we're starting to use, or at least on our channel, we use it 100%, we use digital format stuff. They don't slow things down too much, because it's just another button you press and it automatically calculates. In this, well, it's another dice you roll, which slows things down. It's just that little bit if you're doing the across the table. Ambush is a thing. It's got the rules there. But there's a whole, like, the reason why this game system moves into like a little bit above that, the rules medium style. So it'd be close, like, between rules medium and rules hard. Or complex, I should say, because of how they resolve combat. Combat's a whole thing, because once you attack and the other person defends at the same time, if they've got enough stamina, of course. So that is a thing that complicates things, that slows things down. It's not uncommon, but it slows things down. Then it's got far more things that are applicable. So, without going into a huge amount of detail, you've got attack, step 1. You've got your damage, so you've got your add silver damage if applicable. So if you're fighting monster, and if you've got silver damage, silver's good. It hurts more. If you're using mundane weapons, you're going to do less damage, especially to monsters. That's the whole thing about the universe, a whole thing about why witches use silver weapons. You've got which modifier you're using. Are you using a strong modifier, like a strong strike, or not strong strike? Then you do where it asks, like where it hits, as in the armor. So the armor in that location where it hits has a damage reduction. If you have it, essentially, if the armor has more rating than the amount of damage that gets through, no damage gets through. So the armor isn't to hit, the armor actually just stops the damage. And I like that style. I think it's more realistic. I think it works better. I have never liked the D&D style. And when I say D&D, I mean all the way back to AD&D 2nd edition when I started playing 25 plus years ago. Never liked that style where armor makes it harder to hit. No, armor just absorbs damage. And if there's more damage that gets through the armor, well then, great. You get hit. You get hurt. So, again, the armor absorbs damage. If there's any damage left over in the hit location, because they've got hit locations. So every hit location has a different modifier. And so then you calculate that. Then you calculate any resistances or susceptibilities. Then the damage is totaled. So that's a 7-step process. Yes, I imagine things will get a lot faster with time and with practice, but this does complicate things. This makes combat slow. From my experience, the more accurate you make combat, the slower it becomes. The more unrealistic it is, the faster it becomes. So games like Powered by Apocalypse, combat's unrealistic, but it's quick, it's finished, it's done, it's smooth. Games like, I was going to say Dungeons and Dragons, in theory should be quick and smooth because it's unrealistic, but how they deal with the unrealism is to add all these other things you can do, all these options you can do, which slows it down instead, but it still doesn't make it accurate. So in theory it should be fast, but it's not, because they've overly complicated their feats instead of like the mechanism itself. The mechanism is quick in D&D, but the feats slow it down. In this, the mechanism is slow, but it makes things really dangerous. And remember, you're doing hits to body, so that could be a whole thing in itself. So that's one of the things I really wanted to put into there as well. That system is quite complicated. You've got critical effects, so essentially a critical hit, or critical injury I should say. Is it critical injury? Yeah, critical wound and healing. So it is critical wounds. So that's a whole thing in itself. And it's ongoing issues, which again makes it more realistic, slowing combat down. So that happens when you attack with 10 more than you need for your DC. So it's not about damage, it's 10 more, but they also get 5 extra damage which can't be soaked. Just 5 extra damage. So that could be bad in itself. And then you've got a table of what effects you can have, etc. There's a whole big thing about these. So without going into magic, I did want to point out that there's color coded. So if you notice, this is a red for combat, and it's color coding. So if you scroll down to crafting, we've got another color code. So this is what I liked about the system, where everything is color coded. So even the main book has those same color codes. And it means when you're searching for something specifically, it's really, really quick to search through the book, because everything is color coded, so you know exactly what you're looking for. And it's the same thing when I opened up that GM screen, everything was color coded. It's a really, really good technique to allow for people to search for your books and use your products, and you just get used to it. I was going through the AD&D book recently because I was explaining it to somebody recently that it doesn't even have a table of contents. You just knew where things were. That made things really, really hard because there's no table of contents, there's no color coding, there's no nothing. You just had to know where things were out of memory and out of rote. In this, color coding, table of contents, everything, it's beautifully, it's amazingly done, and it's very player friendly. Although I haven't played this, there's a reason why I've bought all these supplements, because I want to play this or run it. It's a great setting. I really, really like the setting, even though I'm one of the rare people who've never played, like, have never finished the games. But I really enjoy the games. And I think the world is just really, really rich in content, in lore, where the monsters aren't the monsters, but often the humans and the factions are the monsters. And they're monstrous towards the monsters. And I think that is a really great moral standing and moral setting. In this dark, dark world, the monsters aren't always the bad guys. It's most often the humans. So that's my thoughts. I would like to play this. I would like to run this. Actually, I want to play a bit more these days, but um, I think it's a great book. Even The Witcher Easy Mode, it's free on DriveThruRPG. Pick it up. You can also get other products from Artelsaran Games at artelsarangames.com. Check them out. They do some great stuff. Yes, it's a little bit more complicated than what you might be used to, but if you want some gritty realism, some really gritty gameplay, this is a really good system for that. A lot of systems fail at doing gritty. A lot of systems go, well, here we do have a gritty option, but it doesn't really work too well. In this gritty is the way to go. Absolutely the way to go for the setting, for everything. And you don't even have to use the setting. The setting doesn't have to be used as The Witcher, but it can be used as any generic setting, and it's got everything there for you. One thing is, crafting's a big thing. Just like in the computer games, crafting is a big thing. They brought that through. Spells are a big thing as well. So there's a lot there for people, and the classes are quite diverse and quite interesting. Without going into them in detail, they are quite interesting. So go check them out. Have some fun with your role-playing games. We'll keep it short today, and enjoy your role-playing. So that's me for today. Bye.